The dog appeared at dawn, and it was not begging for food or shelter. It stood at the edge of Joel McKinley's land like a ghost pulled from the dust, crying in a way that cut straight through the quiet morning. The sound was not wild barking or hunger-driven noise. It was grief, deep broken grief that made Joel's hands go still on the axe handle. Something terrible had happened, and this animal had come not to ask, but to warn. Joel had been splitting wood behind his worn cabin when the cries reached him. The steady thud of iron into oak suddenly felt small and meaningless. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked toward the far fence line. About 50 yards away stood the dog, thin as a shadow, rust-colored fur hanging in tangled clumps. Blood darkened its paws, and its ribs showed clearly with every breath, but it did not lower its head in submission or move closer like a stray would. It stood tall, stiff, and broken, as if holding itself together by will alone. The dog howled again, a long sound that echoed across the valley. Joel felt his chest tighten. He had heard that sound before, years back, when a mountain lion had lost its mate. This was not fear. This was mourning. Every few moments, the dog would step toward the open wilderness behind it, then stop and look back at Joel. Its amber eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his skin prickle. It was not asking for help. It was demanding it. Joel had lived alone on this remote ranch for 7 years. He knew animals. He knew hunger, injury, and fear. But this was different. This dog was carrying something heavy, something it could not handle alone. And whatever it was, time mattered. The dog changed its behavior, running several steps toward the hills, stopping, then returning to the same spot. Again and again it repeated the motion, its eyes never leaving Joel. The meaning became clear, even if Joel did not want to accept it. It wanted him to follow. Joel looked back at his cabin, at the unfinished stack of wood, at the simple life he had built to avoid trouble. His mind told him this was foolish. Following a wounded animal into wild land could lead to nothing but trouble. But the cries grew sharper, more desperate, as if the dog knew Joel was hesitating. Something in those hollow eyes told Joel that whatever the dog had lost might still be saved, if he moved now. Against his better judgment, Joel stepped forward. The change in the dog was instant. The howling stopped, replaced by short, urgent whimpers. Hope flickered through its broken frame. It turned and began moving toward the hills, stopping often to make sure Joel followed. Up close, Joel saw the signs that troubled him most. This was not a wild dog. Beneath the dirt and blood was a worn leather collar, old metal tags clinking softly as it walked. Someone had cared for this animal, someone recent. They crossed open land first, then rougher ground. Rocks cut into Joel's boots, brush toward his clothes. The dog moved with purpose, despite its injuries, like it had walked this path many times before. Joel struggled to keep up. After nearly an hour, Joel slowed and called out for the dog to stop. His legs burned, and the sun was climbing fast. He needed to think about getting back before dark. The dog's response broke him. It turned and began howling again, this time sharp and accusing. It ran back to Joel, gently tugged at his pant leg with its teeth, then pawed at him, eyes wide and pleading. This was not instinct. This was intention. This was a creature begging for a life. Then Joel heard it, a sound carried faintly on the wind. A human voice, weak, broken, calling for help. The dog froze, ears snapping forward, then looked at Joel with something close to relief. This was what it had been trying to say. Someone was out there. The dog bolted forward, forcing Joel to follow faster than his body wanted. They climbed a low ridge, and below them sat a small cabin pressed between rock walls. Old, forgotten. Windows broken, roof sagging, no smoke, no road. But the voice came again, clearer now. A woman. The dog raced down the slope, barking wildly, throwing itself at the cabin door. Joel followed carefully, his heart pounding. The place felt wrong, too hidden, too quiet. At the door, Joel heard the woman crying, calling a name, again and again. "Rust," she begged. "I'm sorry. Please come back." The dog scratched at the door, whining, looking at Joel as if his heart might break open. Joel tried the handle, locked from inside. He called out, telling her help had come. Her reply came through sobs and pain. She had been trapped for days, hurt badly, unable to walk. Men had chased her here, dangerous men. She had sent the dog away to save it, believing she would die alone. Joel searched for a way inside and finally found a broken window at the back. He cleared the glass and climbed through. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and rot. He followed the sound of her breathing into the main room. The woman lay near the door, her leg twisted wrong, her face pale and drawn. Joel dropped to his knees beside her. Then he saw her face clearly. The world seemed to tilt. Even after 15 years, even beneath dirt and pain, Joel knew her. Ruby. His sister's eyes fluttered open, and when they focused on him, relief washed over her face. Then terror followed. She grabbed his arm and whispered his name like a warning. Before Joel could speak, before he could understand how she was here, she begged him to run, because the men who were hunting her were still out there, and now they would kill him too. Joel tried to calm Ruby, but her grip tightened on his arm as if letting go would mean death. Her breathing was shallow and uneven, and sweat covered her face despite the cold air inside the cabin. She kept whispering that he should leave, that he was in danger just by being there. Joel shook his head and told her he was not going anywhere. Whatever had brought her to this broken place, whatever fear had driven her for years, it had ended the moment the dog found him. Ruby tried to sit up and cried out in pain. Joel saw then how bad her injuries were. Her leg was bent wrong, and her lips were cracked from thirst. She had been suffering for days. Joel tore strips from his shirt and did what little he could to steady her leg. As he worked, she kept talking, her words rushing out as if she feared she would lose the chance. She told him men on horseback had chased her through the hills, men who knew her name, men who would not stop. She said their father's past had caught up to her, that the truth she carried was worth killing for. Joel felt anger rise in him. Their father had been a good man. Everyone knew that. Ruby must be confused from pain and fever. But when Joel said this, Ruby began to cry. She told him she had left 15 years ago to protect him. That night their father died was not an accident. Powerful men had come to silence him, and she had seen it with her own eyes. Joel felt sick as she spoke. Her voice shook, but the details were sharp. Too sharp to be lies. She described stolen cattle, secret brands, names whispered in the dark. She spoke of watching from the barn as their father begged for mercy, of a gunshot that ended everything. Joel wanted to cover his ears. He wanted to tell her to stop. The man she described was not the father he remembered. Ruby said she had run so Joel would never know, that she had carried the truth alone, hiding it inside herself because written proof could be destroyed, but memory could not, and now that memory was killing her. Joel was still trying to understand when Rust growled. It was low and steady, not wild. The kind of sound that meant danger was close. Joel turned his head just as the sound of horses reached them. Hooves, several, coming fast. Ruby's face drained of color. She grabbed Joel's sleeve and shook her head hard. She whispered a name he had never heard before, and said that man had killed their father, that he was here now. Joel looked around the cabin. One door, small windows, no place to run. He helped Ruby toward the back room, easing her into a low root cellar hidden behind crates. She bit down on her sleeve to keep from screaming. Rust stayed near the front door, body stiff, ears forward. Boots hit the porch. A man's voice called Ruby's name like he was greeting an old friend. Calm, confident, certain she had nowhere left to go. Joel felt a cold clarity settle over him. Panic would kill them faster than bullets. The door shook under a heavy kick. Joel overturned the table and crouched behind it with his rifle. He did not plan to win. He planned to delay. The door burst open. 3 men entered, guns drawn, eyes sharp. They scanned the room, surprised to see Joel standing there. Their leader stepped forward, tall, gray-haired, his face calm but his eyes hard. He asked who Joel was. Joel lied. He said he had found the woman hurt and was helping her. He said he knew nothing about why anyone would want her dead. For a moment it worked. Killing a stranger brought risks. But the man watched Rust, watched how the dog positioned itself between Joel and the back room. His eyes narrowed. He ordered his men to search. Joel's heart pounded as they moved. He knew they would find Ruby. He knew this was ending. Then more horses arrived. For a moment Joel hoped. But the men who came were not help. They were more of the same. The cabin filled with danger. 6 men now, smiling, patient. They surrounded Joel, weapons ready. The leader spoke softly, explaining how this could end easily or painfully. Joel said nothing. Hours passed. Ruby's breathing grew worse. Then she began to seize. The men froze, realizing she might die before they got what they wanted. The leader made a choice. He allowed Joel to take her to town under guard. Alive, she was useful. Dead, she was nothing. Ruby survived, but she was changed. Her memory shattered. Her words lost shape. The truth she carried became broken pieces. The men walked free. Joel stayed. And Rust never left his side. Ruby drifted in and out of the world for weeks after that day. Joel stayed by her side in the small-town clinic, watching her chest rise and fall, never knowing if she would wake again. When she finally opened her eyes, they were empty in a way that frightened him more than death would have. She knew his face, but not always his name. Some days she spoke clearly. Other days her words tangled and slipped away before they made sense. The men kept their promise. They watched from a distance and made sure Joel understood the rules. No talking to lawmen, no questions, no digging into the past. Ruby was alive, but only barely, and that was the bargain. When she was strong enough to move, Joel took her back to his ranch. The land that had once been his escape became their hiding place. Ruby could not walk well, and the seizures came without warning. Joel learned to read the signs, to sit with her through the storms in her mind, to hold her hand until the shaking passed. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Ruby remembered. She would speak of the barn, the night air, the sound of a gunshot. She would whisper names and places, then forget them just as quickly. Joel listened and held those fragments inside himself, knowing they were all that remained of the truth. He went once to a territorial investigator, careful and slow, sharing only what could not be traced back to Ruby. It was enough to bring down a few small men, not enough to touch the ones who mattered. The man who killed their father walked free. He lost some land, spent a short time behind bars, then returned to power. Justice, in that world, belonged to those who could afford it. Life settled into a hard rhythm. Joel worked the land. Ruby helped when she could, folding cloth, feeding chickens, sitting in the sun with Rust at her feet. The dog never strayed far. He slept near the door at night, head lifted at every sound, as if the wilderness itself could not be trusted. There were days Ruby laughed like she used to. There were days she cried without knowing why. Joel learned that love did not always look strong. Sometimes it looked like patience. Sometimes it looked like staying. At night, Joel would sit on the porch and think about the man he had believed his father to be. That man was gone now, replaced by a truth he could never fully share. He understood then why Ruby had run. Some knowledge did not free you. It marked you. Rust would rest his head on Joel's knee, his amber eyes watching the dark hills. The dog had lost everything and still found a way to save what mattered. In a land that took more than it gave, that meant something. They survived, not cleanly, not bravely, just honestly. And in the Wild West, sometimes survival was the only victory left.